I found my grandfather's confession. My name is Arthur Anderson. My memory isn't what it used to be, but I know I'm 98 years old, and I spent time in Europe during the Second Great War. But I can still tell and remember most of the life-changing events in my life. It's important that whoever reads this knows that I'm not a bad man now, nor was I in my youth. I was young, stupid, and full of piss and vinegar. Instead, I grapple with the decisions I made as a youth, and I hope that I can be spared the wrath of hell, even if I do not deserve to be saved. In my time in the army, I took many lives. It was war, and war was bloody and brutal, and cost many good men their lives. One life I took in particular still haunts me. I took the life of a man outside of the war. I took his life, and at the time played it off as self-defense. But he and I, and the Lord, all know I did not need to take that life that night. At least not the first time. I prayed for forgiveness. I prayed for mercy for my own soul, the same way I prayed for his soul every day since 1944. I watched the life leave this man's eyes twice that day, and in an alley in the city in brisk October night. I found out afterward that his name was Hugo. Nobody could tell his last name. All I knew at the time was that he was a Nazi, and Nazis were bad. It was pretty much point and shoot after that. Hugo and a few others had been that night, and they were being detained by a few men. They had been discovered in a building that looked like a school. They were in a science wing. Where they discovered piles of bodies that looked as if they'd been decaying for months. Littered the hallway and rooms. Candles and dark imagery littered the rooms, and the room where the men were found, with no exception. We opened fire. By the time the dust settled, Hugo and two others were all that were left alive, and the other two had been burned so bad they probably wouldn't make it through the night. It looked like the men had been involved in some type of sacrifice. Pentagrams and scribbles in the blood filled the walls, and the place had most the putrid smell. Nobody was talking. We cuffed them and took them out of the building. The rest of the afternoon was quiet and uneventful. Hugo later in the evening started shaking and convulsing, and looked like he had taken a cyanide capsule or something similar. We found out later, once he had died, he had most likely had been having seizures at least. That's what the medic said. The captain had told me in the past that he wasn't even taking prisoners that were healthy, and it wasn't his job to babysit the ones that weren't. I remember that, but the captain was gone now, lost in the firefight. We either needed to put these men out of their misery, or be responsible for lugging them back and forth. The boys and I didn't want to have anything to do with hauling more than we had to, but since the heat of the battle was over, we couldn't bring ourselves to finish them off. Overnight, we heard a struggle. I grabbed my rifle and cover and headed out to the spot where the prisoners were being kept. The two burned up ones were piled on top of Jones. One other guy was trying to pull them off of him, but was struggling to do it. Finally, he and I were able to, and I'll never forget the sight. Jones was dead, and it looked like they were ripping out his guts. It was the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. I pointed my rifle and told him to get off. I didn't know any German back then, and I really didn't remember much of it today. I'll never forget what Hugo said. "Sie wata" and "untat." The words at the time meant nothing to me, but in the years since I've come to discover, they meant something. Like, like they were dead and undead. Undead. That word haunts me. Untat. I asked Hugo over and over what he meant, but he didn't speak a lick of English, and discussed the other guy, a medic, put a bullet in the heads of the two burned soldiers. That just left Hugo to deal with. Hugo kept blathering on his native tongue over and over, I assumed trying to get us to take him out, away from them, but nobody there spoke any German. All I could think about was how much I wanted him to die. I was sick of war, I was sick of death, I was sick of seeing this absolute worst in humanity. But even more so, I was sick of being responsible for someone I really didn't want to be alive. And besides, the guy creeped me out, especially after what I just happened to see, and what happened to Jones. I pulled out my pistol, held it to Hugo's head, and told him not to move. He began sobbing. I didn't understand a word, but I'm pretty sure it was something about not wanting to die. Just as I was about to pull the trigger, he turned his head and bit me right on the hand. It was deep, and it hurt. At a pure instant, I tightened my grip on the pistol and accidentally put a bullet through Hugo's chest, right in his heart. Instantly, my own heart sank. I didn't really plan on killing him. I was just going to scare him a little. That's what I tell myself every day. But he had to go and bite me. It was hell of a bite, too. And even though it was close to freezing that night, the wound burned so hot I thought it was going to catch fire. The medic came over when he heard the shot and asked me what happened. I told him I had done and how much I regretted it. What the medic saw happen with Jones, he said he didn't blame me, but I was feeling really bad already at this point. That man was my responsibility. I was supposed to watch him, help him. He was a POW for crying out loud. And I killed him because he bit me? The medic turned to Hugo's body and leaned in to see if he was still alive. That was the last mistake that man ever made, and it cost him his life. Whatever guilt I felt for killing Hugo disappeared for a moment when I saw him sit up, a piece of the medic's cheek in his mouth, dripping with blood. Hugo's face was changed. His eyes were white, his pupils gone. The light wasn't great, but I'll never forget those soulless eyes staring at me. His skin had scrunched up until I could see his gumless teeth, and I swear I could still smell rotten meat instantly. As soon as he began to stand up and move closer, I shot several times with my pistol. Hugo's near lifeless body twisted in the moonlight. I put one more bullet in his head, and the shell of the man went limp. I turned to help the medic. He had lost a lot of blood, but he was still moving around. As soon as him and I came face to face, I saw the same soulless eyes that Hugo had. I knew I had to put the medic out of his misery. I put a bullet in his chest. It didn't stop him, though. I was out of ammunition before I could reload. My former brother in arms was on top of me trying to bite me, the same way Hugo had moments ago. Once again, my instincts took over, and when the dust had settled, I realized that my knife had found its mark, piercing the medic's ear canal. I considered that a mercy killing after seeing what he and Hugo had become. Hugo was desperate on me. That man should have not been killed that night. Whatever he had done to sell his soul to the devil, or whatever he had become that night, is still a mystery to me. All I can be sure of is that once the medic was bitten, he most likely perished from his wound, and whatever happened to the prisoners that night happened to the medic too. Those demon faces haunt me every night in my dreams. I may not remember much, but I will never forget the events of that night. I did not dare tell anyone else what happened that night. The only other one that knew was the medic, and he was set to the Lord that night, which only left me and me alone. To know the truth of what we saw, nobody else would have believed me. I set fire to the bodies to cover the incident, but made it look like one of the POWs had escaped, killed the medic, but had tripped over a lantern and started a fire. It was the best thing I could come up with at the time. If you are reading this, I have most likely passed away, or if you've been going through my things, not only is this letter meant to be a confession of my sin, it also meant to be a warning for whoever finds my corpse. When you find me, I feel I would no longer be the man I was in life, but I feel some soulless creature looking for blood. I pray that you will find in your heart to have mercy on me and pierce my brain with his letter opener. I'm sitting on my desk. On my experience, it is only so far away to end the demons that take over a body. I'm not able to take my own life, as it would be a no hell-worthy sin, and I already had one hovering over me. That's enough for one lifetime. I pray to God He will forgive me.